Sonic X Episode 47. We see someone in a submarine saying there's interference and someone jamming their signals, and then they tell Westwood that a large object's heading for them. A boat goes through the ocean, and Topaz says they've encountered an unknown vessel and are under attack. Then she's not able to continue the call anymore, but I'm guessing she'll still be alive afterwards instead of reality ensuing. Then the next morning, Scarlet reports on the Seahawks Disappearance. So close to Sea Fox, but of course not Tails' submarine. And Sonic says that's why he can't stand water. Chuck is suspicious that his disappearance wasn't an accident, and other vessels have encountered the same phenomenon in that area. The Bermuda Triangle? Chris wonders if he's thinking that Emerald's down in the ocean somewhere, even though he clearly fell into the ocean, so no duh. I doubt he'll appear again. I mean, he wasn't in the comic after the tournament arc. Then we get another boring scene with the president where Rouge wonders if someone made the ship disappear. Shouldn't that have been obvious from the start? She says that if a thief wanted to steal a ship, they wouldn't want to leave any evidence behind for the cops. Gee, I wonder if she has experience with theft. Agent Flipsy says that if anyone captured the ship, he'd have access to all the data of the country's defense system and could bring the country to its knees. Eggman's robots nag him, saying that if he doesn't sit up straight when he types, he could hurt himself somehow. Why does he put up with them doing that instead of reprogramming them? Eggman sees Knuckles on the screen and decides to drop by somewhere. It's hard to pay attention to a show this boring. Maybe there's a reason I'm so uninterested in making reviews of this. I made reviews of all the other Sonic shows before this really quickly. Someone says that this map he found proves that the world's oldest mystery has been solved. The robots of Eggman dressed up like mummies demand him to give them the map, and sadly cuts past them getting the map because they're too lazy to animate it, as they rush out of the house after its security system was activated. Eggman says this map is the world as it looked ages ago, and he can use his computer to see how the world looked further back in the past. He finds the geographical location of Eurasia or something, and plans to use it to force people to acknowledge that he rules. I do love the concept of him rising an underwater continent and ruling it. Not only would it make him a worthwhile, respectable major threat, but it'd be making use of a continent instead of wasting it. And it turns out the guy who lost the map has a pointless connection to Tanaka. It turns out Eurasia was the home of an ancient civilization that was highly advanced. If Penders was writing this, they'd be the echidnas, and be way more interesting than boring humans. The man says a volcanic eruption had destroyed Eurasia, which the Seahawk had been searching for before it disappeared. But it's just Europe and Asia mashed together. Wouldn't that mean it destroyed Europe and Asia? So how did this guy think the robots who stole from him were mere thugs? It should have been obvious that they were robots thanks to their voices, at least. After it turns out the ship disappeared exactly where that unusually tiny continent disappeared. It should have been called an island if it's so small. Knuckles, Sonic, and Chris go out to sea, and Knuckles taunts Sonic about his hydrophobia, and Sonic lies that he's lost his phobia and just doesn't like getting wet. Of course, he wants to get off the ship as soon as possible. Then they see bubbling from the surface of the ocean in the ship, and some water sprays their deck. It turns out they're being threatened by a giant ship belonging to Eggman, and Bokoon goes to taunt them. He shows them a message from Eggman, who tells them to surrender because the ship can take on the Navy. I doubt that, it's just one ship. A man says that if one volcano in the hotspot of the world erupts, all the other volcanoes will erupt too. And he says that no geologist believes such a bizarre theory. And he says that the Eurasians were all wiped out and there's no trace of them in the archaeological record after the volcano got erupted by them. Eggman isn't interested in scholarly talk even though he's a scientist and plans to threaten the world, and he summons the sails to knock Sonic into the sea. Chris immediately jumps in to save Sonic, who is lucky enough to float on the surface no problem. Tanaka throws something into the sea that knocks out Chris, and Sonic sarcastically thanks him, and Chris grabs the life circle thing to help Sonic. Then we see a plane reminding me of the egg carrier rise out of the sea, and someone says that Eggman has his defenses down, and it turns out it's a government ship, not a Eurasian ship, since this is more realistic. I guess the government figured out this technology because of Eggman, and one of the people on the ship says Rouge is only on board as an observer. Rouge would be even more intolerable in the show if she was constantly being made fun of. so at least she has some dignity, and this is very rare. Eggman's ship fires a bunch of missiles at the enemy airship, which fires back at him, and Tanaka cries because he's so happy to see Chris and Sonic get back on the boat. It seems weird that instead of the heroes fighting Eggman, this random government airship is fighting him instead. They're so passive. Tails takes off with the X-Tornado, so at least he's gonna try to help. He transforms a tornado, and Eggman shows a hologram of Topaz and says that if his ship is destroyed, Topaz will go down with him. He's holding them hostage to make sure he gets what he came for, and Rouge tries to stop the government agent from fighting Eggman because of Topaz. He's pragmatic enough and also douchey enough to say he only cares about doing his job and would treat Rouge like an enemy if he opposed them. The tornado goes up to the plane and Rouge is given permission to help too. Eggman's ship starts heading for the island. How can it fly in the air anyways? It's so not aerodynamic, it's just a pirate ship. Eggman and his robots get smoke around them because I guess he's being threatened by the airship, and he decides he cares more about revenge than making the volcanoes erupt to rule the world. How does he expect to rule the world by destroying it with a bunch of volcanic eruptions? That doesn't make any sense at all. A red light shows up, and Sonic and Knuckles get knocked away by a ball of light, and they spin around the air, and Sonic gets launched with it in spin dash form to damage Eggman's airship in one hit, saving the day in one measly attack, making me wonder why he didn't just do that in the first place. To be fair, it take a while for him to think to do that with Knuckles. And out of nowhere, it turns out Rouge saved the hostages. We should have seen her save them. Eggman asks where his Chaos Emerald went, and he says he can't steer the Eggmobile and it seems to fall into a volcano. Wouldn't that get Eggman killed? And I don't get it, why is Topaz disappointed with Rouge? That's confusing. Chuck hopes Eggman won't find the ruins of Eurasia, and we see the volcano have smoke coming out of it. So this episode had an interesting premise behind it. Eggman kidnaps Topaz and her crew, and it turns out there's this underwater ancient civilization on normal, boring Earth, which used to be advanced, and ended up destroying itself because it caused a volcano to erupt and the continent's been underwater ever since. And Eggman went to that place because he thinks he can get every volcano on Earth to erupt at the same time by making just one volcano erupt. It's a good thing someone says that no real geologist believes that's possible. It's very confusing that Eggman would think destroying the world with lava would let him rule it though. And Eggman gets defeated because the government airship keeps constantly firing missiles at him. So at least with all the damage his airship's being caused, it's not really just one hit from Sonic that takes him down. And Sonic flung himself into the air with Knuckles in a creative way, taking advantage of momentum in his gliding. So no wonder he took so long to think of it. It was a pretty interesting episode. I just wish the show's pacing wasn't so slow and boring. We don't need to see any scenes with the president in them. I think we could have cut out most of those scenes and lost nothing.